Hey guys, back with another video. This time I'm going to talk about lenses. So you bought your new DSLR and you want to understand how your lens selection will affect your choice for your DSLR camera. So pretty much, basically, I'm going to call this video Lenses 101. And just understanding the basics. So one is the focal length. So basically it's magnification or lack thereof, represented in millimeters. Aperture values represented as f numbers. And then we have the fixed focal length, or what they call prime lenses. Then we have the zoom lenses, which are basically multiple focal length in a single lens. And I'm going to talk about crop or full frame lenses. So, got some things to cover here, and I got some examples here. I have a couple of zoom lenses, and I only have one prime lens. I know, it's sad. But here we go. So focal length. So what is focal length? So according to NikonUSA.com, focal length is usually represented in millimeters, is the basic description of a photographic lens. It is not the measurement of the actual length of the lens, but a calculation of the optical distance from the point where light rays converge to form a sharp image of an object to the digital sensor or 35mm film at the focal plane in the camera. And the focal length of the lens is determined when the lens is focused to infinity. So pretty much that's what, in a nutshell, what focal length means. So for instance, a 50mm lens, which is considered a standard lens, and that would be, there's no magnification or wide-angle view, little to no field of view distortion. It's pretty much a best bang for your buck lens, which you can get like a fast or large f-stop glass for the money. So there's going to be one lens you buy after you buy your kit lens that came with your camera. Buy like a 50mm 1.8, or better yet, a 50 1.4. And that'll definitely give you some nice background to subject separation, and it's a pretty fast lens. And they're pretty sharp, too, for the money. They can be had anywhere from, like an f1.8, I think you get for about $230. And an f1.4, maybe about $400 some dollars, just shy of $5. But, yeah, they're a very good bang for the buck. And then anything below a 50mm, for example, a 14, 20, 24, 28, 35, is considered a wide angle. So it pretty much allows you to get more of a scene in the frame, which is not magnified. The distances between foreground and background subjects appear further from each other, just because of separation, because of the wide-angle lens. And as more of the scene is easier to get in focus due to the deeper depth of field because of the wider angle lens. So if you want more near the far sharp, go for like less than a 50mm lens focal length. And then anything above 50mm, for example, 70, 85, 105, 200, 500, is considered telephoto. So you have wide and telephoto. And pretty much the lens, less of the scene is captured in the frame compared to a wide angle, but it's magnified. The distance from foreground to background via compression appears closer. So if you have an object in the foreground and then whatever's in the background, it'll be pulled closer, so it'll appear like the distance will be compressed. And it's pretty much harder to get full scene in focus due to the shallower depth of field, due to the magnification. Unless you use stop down your lens, stop down meaning, use a larger number, smaller aperture. I know, it's kind of confusing. That'll allow you to get more of the scene in focus, but because of the compression and the magnification really plays havoc on the depth of field. I mean, it's good if you want to like separate the foreground from the background. That's awesome for that. But if you want like near to far sharp, sometimes that may not be the case. All right, let's talk about aperture for a second. So aperture pretty much controls the amount of light entering the camera. So smaller number listed on the lens, the more the light is able to gather. So pretty much the more light the lens is able to gather. So yeah, so example of f2.8 is larger than f3.5. So just remember, smaller the number, bigger or wider the aperture, or faster. They call it faster because you can use a faster shutter speed. Lenses with a larger aperture or smaller f number also cost more than ones that do not open up as big. So yeah, they're going to cost a lot more. Like I got the kit lens here, the 18 to 55. that came with the camera. I think you can buy that for like 150 bucks. But if you were to get that in and that's a 3.5 to 5.6, which is called variable aperture. It's not a constant aperture, and I'll talk about that in a second. They're a lot cheaper than, let's say, a constant, like this is a Nikon 7200 f2.8, which is 2.8 all the way through the zoom range. So you do pay for that. So yeah, the constant aperture zoom allows you to use the indicated f-stop throughout the whole range of the zoom lens, whereas the variable aperture zooms, such as the 3.5 to 5.6, are limited. So yeah, so I can use the 2.8 at 70 millimeter, at 100 millimeter, 200 millimeter, I can use all the way through. Now on the variable aperture lens, I'm not able to do that. So my f3.5 starts at 18 millimeter, but when I get to about 50 millimeter on this lens, it turns into a 5.6. So I'll give you a representation example too. Remember I mentioned like if you buy a prime 50 millimeter lens, like an f1.8, f1.8 at 50. This lens here is f5.6 at 50 millimeter. So it's not letting in as much light as the dedicated 50 millimeter lens I was talking about before, the best bang for your buck. So let's talk about fixed focal or prime lenses. And that would be like a non-zoom. So this one right here would be considered a prime lens. This is a 14 millimeter f2.8 manual focus lens. So the fixed focal length are commonly known as prime lenses, and it has nothing to do with prime numbers. They just call them prime. So if someone says, you know, I'm using primes, that's what they're talking about. They pretty much have a bag full of lenses is what they're saying. So that they're indicated by a single focal length printed on the lens. So for example, the 14 f2.8 is a wide angle prime lens. So this is an f2.8. So I can use f2.8 all the way up to whatever, but it is a single focal fixed focal length. The other example would be a 20 f2.8 or a 300 f4. The 20 millimeter is a wide angle lens covering the 20 millimeter focal length, and the 300 millimeter is covering the 300 millimeter focal length. So that's what that is. So in terms of focal length, if you get a prime lens, it's a single focal length lens. They're pretty nice. So zoom lenses have multiple focal lengths within a range to use. For example, the 18 to 55 lens has a focal length at range of 18 millimeters all the way up to 55 and all focal lengths in between, since 50 millimeters is considered a normal or standard lens. Zoom lenses are pretty popular due to their focal length ranges all in one lens, which saves you from carrying multiple lenses. Some common zoom ranges are 18 to 55, 24 to 70, or 70 to 200. So yeah, you see how small this is. So this covers a lot of ranges in a small compact. That's why zoom lenses are very popular. At slight trade-off of image quality, but not too bad. Like some of these constant aperture pro-level lenses, they're pretty sharp. But when you compare these kit lenses to a prime lens, there's no comparison. So the zoom lens types, so the variable or constant aperture varieties. So the 18 to 55 here, I know I keep using that as an example, is f3.5 to 5.6 is a variable aperture zoom lens. Starts at about f3.5 and ends at 5.6. So this doesn't end at 5.6, but it starts at the far range of the focal length. It starts at 5.6. So this would be considered a slow lens due to the lack of high light gathering capability. So at 18 millimeter, lens open up to f3.5, and as I mentioned before, at 50 and above, it only opens up to 5.6. So the constant aperture lenses, for example, the 24 to 70 2.8, which I have here. This is a Nikon 24 to 70 2.8. You can see how big it is. I have a lens hood on it, so it kind of makes it bigger, but you get the idea. That's considered a fast lens because the aperture opens up to 2.8. The 2.8 is available to use throughout the whole zoom range from 24 all the way up to 70. Unlike my 18 to 55 here, the 24 to 70 f2.8, I can use the 2.8 at 24, 28, 35, 50 millimeter, 70 millimeter, all the way. Whereas my 18 to 55, it starts out at 3.5, but then when I get to about 50 millimeter, it goes to a 5.6 on. So at 50 millimeter, I can't use the f3.5 to let in more light. So these varieties of lenses are pretty much more expensive and heavier due to the higher quality construction and more glass used to accommodate the large f-stop. So yeah, because they're going to have a larger objective lens in the front, so it needs to gather more light to be able to deliver that constant f2.8. So yeah, they're going to be heavier and more expensive, definitely. Like I believe this 24 to 70 2.8. I think I got it for like 1,600 just for the lens. So it'll cost just as much as the body, if not more sometimes. But it is worth it if you're going to put your money anywhere. Like I said before, get a high quality crop sensor camera and put your money in the lenses. So prime versus zoom lenses. So zoom lens advantage. Well, for example, the 18 to 55 3.55 f1.6. This Common kit lens covers the whole range from 18 to all the way up to 55. So to cover this range, you would need to cover the range that this little guy does, the 18 to 55. You'd have to carry an 18 millimeter, 20, 24, 28, 35, 50, and maybe 55 millimeters. So you'd have to have a bag full of these lenses to match the capability of just one little zoom that accommodates the focal ranges in between. At the slight cost of image quality, of course. But most photographers are more than willing to sacrifice slight image quality over convenience, just for the fact that you don't have to carry a bag full of lenses and you don't have to, or switch lenses out in the field. That's the other thing. If you start switching lenses out in in a dusty environment or whatever, you can risk getting dust and other particulates on your sensor. So crop or full frame lenses. Almost all modern primes can be used on both crop and full frame cameras. So if you have a prime lens, generally, you can use them on both crop and full frame, which is pretty convenient. But that can't be said all said about zoom lenses. I'll get that in a second. So generally, the lenses from one camera company will not work on others. So I can't put a Nikon lens on a Canon body or a Canon lens on a Nikon body for the most part. I mean, I'm sure you can if you use third-party adapters, but why? Maybe they don't offer it in their native brand or what have you. Crop lenses generally do not work on full frame bodies. So if you, like for instance, this 18 to 55 is a crop lens. I can't put this on my full frame body. I can, but you're going to get some vignetting on the corners. It's just not good. However, full frame lenses do work on both crop and full frame bodies. So I can put this 24 to 72.8 on a crop sensor camera, such as the D5500. Actually, it's already on a crop sensor. It's on a D500. So I can put that on that, as well as I can put it on the full frame D810 over there. So Nikon and Canon. I mean, I'm just using Nikon and Canon because I'm familiar with them. So Nikon calls their crop bodies and lenses are indicated as a DX full frame and full frame is marked as FX. So if you see lenses that say DX or bodies say DX, it's going to be a crop, and if you see FX, it means full frame. In the Canon world, they use EFS and EF. So the EF-S is crop, and in full frame is marked as an EF lens. So when you're shopping for lenses for your camera, keep that in mind. So if you have an entry level like Canon Rebel, you're going to probably buy EF-S lenses. You can buy EF, you can put full frame on your crop sensor, but know that it only uses toward the center portion of the lens, or the sweet spot. And if you buy a dedicated lens for a crop sensor camera, it'll probably be better than using a full frame on a crop, just because it's designed for that format. All right, so how to read lens specs. So if you see a Nikon DX 18 to 55 f3.556G, which is this lens here. So what that means, as you can see, is the yellow DX means it's designated as a crop censored Nikon cameras. So it's for the Nikon crop sensor. The 18 to 55, that's the focal range in this zoom range. And then the f3.5 to 5.6, of course, is the aperture range of the zoom lens. On the Canon side, we have the Canon EFS 18 to 55, 3.5, 5.6. So you'll see a bunch of other letters past but just to pay attention to the yellow, orange, and green I've indicated. So EF-S signifies that it's a crop censored Canon cameras. That's what it's designed for. And then 18 to 55 is the focal range, and 3.5, 5.6 is the aperture. Also consider the filter size, which is the threaded front portion of the lens used for attaching accessories such as UV and polarizing filters, such as common size would be 46, 52, 58, 62, 77, and so on. And, you know, guys, don't cheap out. Buy the multi-coated ones. Don't buy, like, the cheap ones. And generally, it just threads right on the front here. So, don't be confused by other... You just screw something on here. And I generally like to put a high-quality UV filter if I'm in adverse environments, if I'm outside. You know, that completes the weather sealing on the lens, too, in my opinion. Polarizers are good to have. Just they remove reflections and dark and blue skies. I'll probably do another video of that sometime. So that's pretty much it, guys. That's Lens 101. So, you know, in quick review, if you have a crop sensor camera, buy a crop sensor lens. If you want full frame, that's fine. You can put a full frame lens on a crop sensor, but not the other way around generally. And then just remember, from manufacturer to manufacturer, they don't mix and match. They don't play well without special adapters. And then, of course, prime versus zoom. Prime is just like a lens with... This doesn't zoom. There's no zooming mechanism on this thing. It's just fixed. That's just a focus ring here and my aperture ring. But pretty much, it's fixed focal length. Prime. They're sharp. They're pretty good. They're lightweight for, you know, for what they are, except for, you know, super telephotos. Like if you have like a 300 f2.8, that's going to be pretty big. But pretty much, that's a prime lens, and they're nice. Disadvantage of prime lenses is you're stuck that one focal length, and if you want to change lenses in the field, you know, you're subjecting your lens, your camera body to dust and other environmental hazards. Zoom lenses, on the other hand, they sacrifice slight image quality, but in return, you're getting a wider range of focal lengths. It's like having a bag of lenses, a bag of prime lenses in one zoom. For instance, the 18 to 55. I would have to have like 5 or 6 lenses to cover that range. 5 or 6 of these to match one of these, being able to zoom back and forth. So don't confuse zoom and telephoto. When they say I have a zoom lens, that doesn't mean the zoom just means that you are able to move from one focal length to the next. It can be telephoto. I mean, you can have a wide-angle zoom lens, like a 14 to 24. That's not necessarily telephoto. It doesn't zoom in, but it does give you that extra option. Telephoto just implies that it's anything over 50 millimeters. 50 millimeter being standard. Anything below 50 is wide-angle. Anything above 50 is considered telephoto. And then the zoom range just indicates as a variable focal length. And then, of course, you have the constant aperture and the variable aperture. Constant aperture, like this 70 to 200 2.8. Variable aperture would be this 18 to 55, f3.5 to 5.6. So if you see a bunch of numbers after the focal length, that means it's a variable aperture as opposed to a constant. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and hope this is helpful or useful, and I'll see you guys next time.